From AccuWeather.com, this is AccuWeather Daily, a brief host-read article. It's weather news in a nutshell. For millions of Americans, spring does not just mean warmer days and blooming flowers. It also means sneezing, itchy eyes, and constant allergy medication. Temperature, rainfall, wind, and springtime frosts all influence how much pollen ends up in the air. Warmer ground temperatures allow plants and trees to produce pollen more easily. Heavy rain can temporarily wash pollen out of the air, but a few dry days afterward often lead to a sharp spike. Wind can carry pollen hundreds of miles. Frost can briefly suppress pollen, only to intensify it later in the season. So, when and where will pollen be bad this year? Tree pollen season has already begun across Southern California, southern Arizona, and much of the Gulf Coast. As temperatures rise, pollen levels will climb northward through spring. The Ohio Valley is expected to be one of the hardest hit regions this year, with periods of exceptionally high tree pollen, especially after spring rainfall. AccuWeather's Alan Reppert said that a later frost can help short-term pollen with lowering the tree pollen for a short period of time, but also increase pollen later in the season and make it more intense. The frost dynamic is important. A late spring frost can reduce pollen briefly, but levels often rebound later in the season. Most early season tree pollen producing trees, such as juniper and alder trees, can be hit much worse by frost than late-season trees, such as birch, maple, and pine trees. Now, in the Pacific Northwest, tree pollen is expected to start earlier than typical and remain elevated for several weeks. Dramatically high levels are possible in Portland and Seattle. Across the plains, tree pollen season may start a little slower than usual. However, residents should prepare for a few days of exceptionally high levels before counts drop off quickly. Parts of New England may have lower than average tree pollen this season due to a colder start to the year and less rainfall than typical. Grass pollen typically ramps up as tree pollen fades, and this year it may spike early across the northern plains and into the Great Lakes. Reppert said that a combination of above-average rainfall and some warmer weather will bring much higher grass pollen levels to cities such as Chicago, St. Louis, and Minneapolis. Grass responds quickly to moisture and warmth. After a soaking rain, it can grow rapidly, and pollen levels can jump just as quickly. Texas may experience above-average grass pollen for a few weeks, though the season could be shorter-lived compared to northern areas. Along the Gulf Coast, rain returning to more typical levels, combined with a drier start to summer, may help keep grass pollen below average overall. Frequent, heavier rainfall can wash pollen out of the air, reducing sustained high levels. In the Northwest, hot and dry weather is expected to keep grass pollen levels below average for much of the season. However, any rainfall could trigger a short-lived spike lasting a few days. Weed pollen is often associated with ragweed, but it also includes thistle, sagebrush, and mugwort. It typically peaks later in summer and into early fall, dropping off after the first hard freeze. Reppert said that a combination of higher rainfall and a longer period until cold weather comes into the Rockies could make for an intense weed pollen season, but ending a bit earlier than usual. In contrast, cooler weather across eastern Texas through Kentucky and Alabama is expected to limit weed pollen levels. Along coastal Oregon and Washington, repeated storm systems should provide enough moisture for weeds to grow, but rainfall may occur often enough to wash pollen out of the air before it builds to extreme levels. In the Northeast, a lack of rainfall early in weed season, combined with temperatures dropping more quickly, may limit pollen levels overall. Still, any rain event could cause a brief spike lasting a few days. Having a forecast in hand is one helpful thing to have, but managing allergies often comes down to preparation as well. So limit time outdoors in the early morning through the early afternoon when pollen production is typically the highest. Change clothes and shower after spending extended time outside. Use high-efficiency air filters and keep windows closed during those peak days. And consider starting allergy medication before pollen levels surge. Yellowstone National Park's Echinus geyser is doing something that visitors have not seen in years. It's erupting again. On February 7th, the geyser logged its first eruption since 2020. That's according to the U.S. Geological Survey's Yellowstone Volcano Observatory. More eruptions followed, and by February 16th, activity had ramped up to eruptions every 2 to 5 hours. Echinus is the largest acidic geyser in the world, with an acidity similar to that of orange juice or vinegar. The pool is about 66 feet across, rimmed with a red band created by minerals, including iron, aluminum, and arsenic. The current burst of activity looks more like a short wake-up than a long-term comeback, though. Recent eruptions have lasted only a few minutes and reached about 20 to 30 feet, and the USGS noted that Echinus has a habit of becoming active for a month or two before going quiet again. It may already have slowed down, with no eruptions recorded during the last few days of February. Now, that is a dramatic shift from decades ago when Echinus geyser erupted every 40 to 80 minutes. Back in the 80s and the 90s, eruptions sometimes lasted more than 90 minutes and reached about 75 feet. The geyser's activity faded in the early 2000s, then returned briefly in 2017 before going quiet again. And for anyone hoping to catch the action in person, well, the simplest advice is also the most important. Stay on the boardwalk, follow posted closures, and give all thermal features plenty of space. That's all for now. You can find more regional forecasts and science-based articles at AccuWeather.com. And for your local forecast at your fingertips, download the AccuWeather app. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be safe. I will be back tomorrow with more from AccuWeather.